Hi, it's Kevin Lobates here. A while back I posted a video on the distinction between a distributed ledger and a blockchain, and Andy Martin then posted a follow-up piece where he expressed some of his thoughts on the question. And I found it very interesting to listen to Andy's take. Not because of the distributed ledger versus blockchain distinction, but because of a slight difference in focus on a number of terms that I think are actually more important than deciding whether something is a distributed ledger or a bona fide blockchain. And actually, when I look at it more thoroughly, my take really is that discussing whether something is a blockchain or a distributed ledger isn't really the core issue. There are some other concepts that are coming into play, and it depends on what importance you give them as to what answer you'll come up with. So whereas I've made quite a few videos where I talk about blockchain giving back ownership to individuals rather than individuals having to rely on a central authority to manage their assets for them, Andy talks a lot about censorship resistance. And in a way, these are sort of two sides to the same coin. When I talk about owning something, as in you own a particular digital asset, what I'm thinking there is that you have full control over it. Nobody can stop you holding on to it or spending it at whatever time you please. And that, to me, is like the core thing about blockchain systems like Bitcoin. If I hold some Bitcoin, provided I've been very careful with my private keys, I can decide at any moment that I want to transfer them to somebody else. And because the system is decentralized and therefore censorship resistant, nobody can stop me. And so there you can already see the sort of tying in between censorship resistance and ownership. The two come hand in hand. Now, when you're looking at the problem that you're trying to solve, that's when you start coming up with, do I need a permissionless open blockchain, or am I going to run a permissioned closed distributed ledger? Because it's one problem when you're looking at citizens of the world trying to go about their own personal business versus at the other side where you have a number of different corporations who are all trying to interact, and where they are both competing and collaborating at the same time. So ultimately, I really don't think it matters whether you're using a blockchain or a distributed ledger, whether it's completely permissionless and open for anybody, or whether it's very tightly locked down, permissioned, and people have very specific roles. The main aim, as far as I see it, of all these technologies is that it's made very clear from the very start who has what control, who has what rights, and who has what possibilities of veto, for example. And this is the thing that's missing in our traditional systems. Because they've been around for so long, we just sort of take them for granted, and people don't think about the fact that their bank accounts may suddenly be frozen arbitrarily, or their credit card may be blocked, or something like that, just because a government official somewhere sees a red flag and thinks that maybe you've been engaging in something illegal, or because you happen to go on holiday and you don't tell your bank that you'll be spending some money in Egypt rather than in Finland, and suddenly you find at the end of a meal that you can't pay for it, things like that. So that to me really is the core thing. It's this, and whether you call it ownership, which is the shorthand that I use, or whether you call it censorship resistance, which is the way that Andy looks at it, ultimately the aim is the same, and that is to ensure that you can continue to have the same access and control in the system regardless of your circumstances. So I hope that made sense. I did very much enjoy listening to Andy's thought piece, where he said he was talking off the top of his head, but it sounded well constructed to me. And see you all in the next video soon. Bye for now.